Hello, everyone. My name is Jordyn Smith, and I am the voice and the astrologer for this YouTube channel, Nonconformist Conscience. I don't know what it is about every time I get on here. I have to clear my throat. South Node in Virgo here, but today I wanted to do a deeper conversation about the triple conjunction happening between Pluto, Venus, and Ceres in the sign of Aquarius. I want to really elaborate on the Aquarian archetype and what Ceres is reflecting out into the community, all right, which is an Aquarian dynamic. What this is meaning for us on a global level, and also get more into the personal types of levels or places. I did my weekly forecast yesterday on the 2nd. Today is the 3rd. And in that, I really went into the new moon. And I used that analogy as that was the beginning of a sentence. And the exclamation point at the end of that sentence was this triple conjunction. And it's an exclamation point for a reason. If you haven't seen that video, I would go back and look at it because it gives a more personal, individualistic understanding of the energies of this week. But I really want to go into what is this Ceres cycle in Aquarius speaking to for the collective and personally. So first off, let me talk a little bit. This is a very dynamic. It's you know, two planets and an asteroid coming together. And as a recap, before I get into Ceres, if you are new to astrology or evolutionary astrology, when we're looking at Pluto, personally or collectively, through a transit, that is the ongoing evolutionary function of the soul in someone's natal chart. Where your Pluto is speaking to what you're coming in with, your own soul dynamics that are known and familiar. Whenever we're looking at it for the collective in transit, we're looking at, and just individually, wherever Pluto and Aquarius is falling in your chart by house and the aspects it's making, we're speaking to the ongoing evolutionary pool of this is what you're needing to Pluto to penetrate, to uncover, to confront in order to evolve. Pluto is intense. Anyone who's had a Pluto transit or has a lot of eighth house or scorpionic dynamics knows what I'm talking about. It is where you're being confronted with who you are, who you aren't, and who you absolutely cannot be. I love Jeff Green's teaching and him saying that because it hit home for me. I have Pluto and Scorpio, and I have a jam-packed eighth house. And so essentially, what is that phenomenon of confronting who you are, who you aren't, and who you cannot be? Well, Pluto is a bottom line. It is the proverbial why. It's where we can want to hold on to control. It's where we can be entangled in something. It's where we can really be dealing with issues at a deep soul level. And the dynamic of it's confronting us with who we are, who we aren't, and who we cannot be is all of us as souls, in order to evolve, will have our own type of conditioning, which is a Capricornian, Saturnian 10th house function. If you want to understand your conditioning, look at your 10th house, its ruler, look at the planets that fall in that 10th house, look at your Saturn by house and sign, and look at where Capricorn is in your chart. and you'll understand a lot about what you're coming in with in tandem, what is structuring your soul in tandem with Pluto, the things that are known and familiar, which is correlating to where you feel power or security, even if maybe it's not the best or healthiest thing. We stay stuck in the rut of perpetuating the same thing over and over because it's what we know. And anytime we are meant to evolve, we have fear arise beforehand because we know that we're on the precipice of something different. It's going to be unfamiliar, unknown, and we're going to feel insecure and powerless at first before we start a new pattern of awareness, before we change a dynamic. And so the confrontation of Pluto, eighth house, Scorpio, in this sense, Pluto, and understanding who we are, who we aren't, and who we cannot, absolutely cannot be. That confrontation comes in whenever we're confronting our own status quo or our own judgments, our own, oh my God, I might have passed judgment on this person or this situation, and all of a sudden I find myself in this. And now I'm confronted with, who am I going to be? How am I going to show up in the world? How is this going to look? And so we're having to excavate in true Plutonian fashion these inner dynamics that feel comfortable, that we're confronting about ourselves that maybe we don't really like, or that we're all of a sudden having to, it's inducing a bit of humility of, I can't be like this. I can give a little story about this. As you all know, if you're on my channel, I will always share personal stories. I find that I have a lot of Capricorn, and so whenever I have dealt with authority in my life and authority is put on a pedestal, I'm really being vulnerable about my own chart right here. I have had a perception of authority or something outside of myself that I feel is greater than me. It's better than me. It's this, it's that. And I have been confronted time and time again with this understanding of, no, it's not. We're all equal. But I have had to confront my own bias or judgments around people or situations. I tend to find myself anytime I judge. This is why it's really stripped a lot of my judgmental crap away, is because I will literally find myself in those shoes. So my story I'm going to tell you is, I had a friend in my early 20s that she was a mother, and I did not agree with what she was doing. I was being really, really judgmental, uh, very judgmental, on an internal level. Very, like, I did not think what she was doing as a mom was good, who she was having her child around. I felt like she was making really poor choices. And then guess what? I ended up getting pregnant at 19 and having a kid at 20 and having the direct experience of all of a sudden being confronted with the things that I was judging someone else about that I knew nothing about. And I was confronted with, who am I going to be and how am I going to show up with integrity and as a parent? And so there was a lot of situations that I went through that are more scorpionic eighth house things that I really had to fight and claw my way to not be who I saw myself being, which was someone who was acquiescing and submitting and, putting my child in a bad situation when they were an infant. And I'm happy to say that that didn't last very long, but that is a Plutonian experience, an eighth house experience of me confronting myself with my own conditioning, of my own self-righteousness, and choosing to change, to evolve, to grow, to not be that person that would do the same thing that I once judged someone else about. And for a small point in time, I was doing those things. You know, the people who you attract into your life are a mirror for you. And so Pluto has this way of confronting you with all types of dynamics about yourself. Pluto can be things that are usually and most often very subconscious. And so we're not really aware that we're doing certain things until you're having the direct experience of having to make a different choice in order to grow and to evolve. And that's not just about making a discernment, okay, which is a very Plutonian dynamic. It's also about having to absolutely change the structure of the way that you're doing something, meaning that you're having to do the Pluto work. In New Age groups, I hear it's shadow work. Um, I call it the excavation of the soul. It means you're having to confront your own internal dynamics of I am feeling shame because all of a sudden I'm doing something that I never thought that I would do. I feel like that's a universal kind of experience. And then you have to get into Pluto is linked with psychology and emotions. And so and it's dealing with it at a soul level. I have to just be implicit about this. It's dealing with things at a soul level that are dealing with your own inner psychology and emotional dynamics. It's where you've been stuck in a rut and you've resisted, and now you're confronting it in order to grow, in order to evolve. And so there's this need to have to look at the why. Why am I hardwired like this? What is my psychology dealing with this? What are the emotional dynamics? What's my thinking that is perpetuating these emotional dynamics, the psychology of all of this? And for me, that experience that I just told you about was I was very codependent at one point in time. And when you're codependent, you don't want to look at your own stuff because you're getting your value from what you can do for others or how you can do this or how you can do that. And so it's easier to be self-righteous and to pass judgment in that sense than to really work on things at a soul core dynamic. And so I had to really confront my psychology and my emotions around my self-worth, my values, my security, who I was, and who I wasn't going to be anymore. And that was really scary. And that is a Plutonian experience of having to confront the things that are hidden or that you weren't aware of. And so when we're looking at Pluto and Aquarius on a collective level, we are looking at the collective soul, the absolute dynamics that are subconscious to the collective, or the things that the collective is not wanting to do as a way to further the evolution of the masses that are living right now. So when we think about Pluto in Aquarius just coming out of Capricorn, we're looking at how the collective is needing to individuate to throw off the conditioning of the social structures and the taboos, the laws, the norms that are impeding upon Aquarian dynamics of inclusivity. So right now, we are dealing with Aquarian trauma, things that we've lived through before in prior lifetimes on a global level, and all of the distortions and the resistance to throwing it off and liberating from it. And so there's an absolute need right now for the collective to individuate, to accelerate its evolutionary growth through becoming more inclusive. Inclusivity is an Aquarian dynamic, whereas Leo can be exclusionary. It can be, whenever it's distorted, looking at narcissism or perpetuating cycles of Aquarian trauma because people are wrapped up in self-delusion, grandeur. And we're seeing it globally. Mars and Leo right now, though, can really be this dynamic of wanting to creatively actualize and pull in the dynamic of inclusivity as a way to be creative within the collective. And the way that that happens is through Aquarian objectivity of throwing off and shedding the skins of the past ways of doing things, of how we've structured the collective, the community. So there's a lot of Plutonian confrontation that's going to be happening because when you actually confront what is necessary and you do Aquarius and liberate from those dynamics that are rooted in exclusion or grandiosity or separation and not Aquarian community, it can accelerate the collective's evolutionary growth. And so it begs the question, why are you here right now? Why are you showing up? Why have you reincarnated during this time right now? What are you trying to liberate from and through confronting what it is that you need to confront from the past? What is getting in the way of you understanding your own unique individuality and merging with that creative force and understanding that all of us come from the same seed, from source, from source's creativity. So there's this dynamic that's happening right now that is wanting to speak to revolution and rebellion and individuation and liberation. And we are in a really precarious time because Aquarius is a fixed energy. Aquarius can really like to resist any of the fixed signs. Scorpio, I'm going to resist because it's known and familiar. Aquarius, I'm going to stay fixed in this because this is the trauma that I know. And I am going to continue to project these PTSD moments out until I can liberate from them. Taurus, I feel really comfortable right here. And I just want to hide in my house and I just want to work and think about myself and not get out into the community because that seems really wild. And Taurus is also the frog in the well. Like, this is what I know, and I'm fine with just knowing this. And the values. People become very comfortable in their own values when really values need to be, they change over time. They evolve over time. Needs, Taurus dynamics. So there can be a resistance to changing values and needs and evolving them over time. And then we have Leo, which is very much, I don't want to be we, I want to be me. I want to think that everything comes from myself. And instead of acknowledging that I'm actualizing through something much larger than myself. So there can be these fixed energies around these dynamics that really perpetuate exclusion. And on the flip side, when we work with the polarities of signs and we integrate them, Leo, Aquarius, Taurus, Scorpio, there can be a really beautiful symbiosis of acceleration and growth, of understanding each one's unique contribution and individuality helps with the whole, with the community. So this is not a time to be fixed and stuck in the known and familiar way, because Pluto and Aquarius is going to come knocking on your door and help wake you up. So that gets me to Venus. I've talked about Venus several times. It's our relationships with others, it's our relationship with self. It's where our needs, our values, what it takes for me to survive, Taurus, to sustain, meets another's. And Libra is the other ruler of Venus, is about also someone else's needs, like I just said, but also it's rooted in giving, sharing, and inclusion. The more I give, the more I receive. Now, one has to have discernment around how one goes about that, because you don't want to get stuck in a Libran dynamic of this is where I'm getting my value external instead of from Taurus, from inside of myself. But it's this dynamic of our relational needs meeting someone else's relational needs and being able to have reciprocity within that. But Venus and Aquarius is very much about committing oneself to relationships that involve community and rooting oneself in giving, sharing and inclusion and our own unique contribution. And liberating from the past, the things that impede upon us feeling secure within ourselves as a way to become self-reliant. So anything that's getting in the way of understanding your needs, your value, your unique individuality that fortifies your inner relationship to self, the conditioning that's getting in the way or blocking one's own understanding of their Aquarian higher intelligence is wanting to be shed right now. And that leads me to Ceres. Ceres is the great mother of nurturance. And Ceres is where we can experience loss and recovery. And when you're looking at Ceres, you're always looking at the sign that it's in, but also its polarity, because its polarity can really speak to when we lose something, that can be what we're acting out in a more negative way. So Ceres in the sign of Aquarius is really truly about the loss and the recovery. Well, the loss of community on a global communal level, on a humanitarian level. It's the loss of that. And its highest expression, it is about inclusivity. And so we're looking at the loss of how this is showing up in the world right now. The recovery with Ceres, well, and let me go back. Ceres is starting to oppose Mars and Leo. And so we can see that the loss of the recovery of community is perpetuated by these patterns of Mars, war, Leo, narcissism, grandiosity, exclusion, separation. Mars is a function of separation. It is the first Aries, Mars, first house, this first sign in the zodiac, which correlates to the separation of the womb, the cosmic womb, Pisces. So we're looking at how we are reliving and re-experiencing, not understanding that we are all part of a community and that we should all be showing up with our own specialness, Leo, that helps to cultivate community and the laws of inclusivity, knowing that in a natural sense, this is a time where we're trying to recover that each person serves a specific function within the community to be a good steward. to help bring inclusivity. And so we're seeing ad nauseum the loss of this natural principle and the trauma that this is perpetuating on a global level. And so with Ceres and Aquarius, there's a need to recover this dynamic of community, of friendship that's rooted in giving, sharing, and inclusion, about helping out and having humanitarian efforts that help the species survive. And I'm not even just talking about the human species, I'm talking about guys like this and other plant and animal lives. Aquarius is the higher intelligence, and it is the higher intelligence of source and the co-creative function that each one of us plays. So Ceres and Aquarius can be where all of a sudden we're having to, on a global and personal level, decondition by remembering and having prior memories. Aquarius deals with long-term memory, memories of prior lifetimes, all of this, where our unique individuality could have been stripped from us, and the traumatizing effects of that, the traumatizing effects of community being taken away and divisiveness and the separation of understanding that we each serve a specific role and function within the community that is just as equally important as the next person. And so a lot of us can have these memories that we're recovering, that we're needing to work through. And as we work through them, some of us will be re-experiencing certain dynamics that trigger this. As we re-experience this, it helps us as we work through the pure emotion of it. We get to recover the sacred principle of understanding that we are all part of a tribe. We are all part of a community. And that can really help each one of us activate the creative principle, Mars and Leo, within each one of us to show up and do something for our community when we're seeing the atrocities or other things going on in the world. It can be where Aquarius is an air sign, so it's very mental. So all of a sudden you're being able to talk about certain things or bring your own higher intelligence, this inner knowing to the community to be able to be of service. Aquarius, in its highest regard, is being a good steward to help the community. So Ceres here is helping us to recover these sacred principles in order to fortify humanity at this moment in time. And that is done through, one, liberating from Venus the old values and needs that we're needing to evolve from to get us back on track to giving, sharing, and inclusion instead of Leonian exclusion, and doing it in a way that helps to accelerate the growth of the collective conscious right now, the collective soul. And then with Pluto, it's about confronting who are we going to be? What are we going to choose? What are we going to continue to choose? And so it's going to be teaching us about discernment and how each one of our choices affect the whole. And it's also going to be teaching us about how that can affect the whole in a very negative way, and it can also affect the whole in a very positive way. So there's this dynamic of involution, the need to individuate for evolution to proceed. And that is through confronting all of these dynamics. And so this is why we're needing to really get back to the natural, timeless principles of how we treat each other, how we survive. Because Pluto in Aquarius is going to show up in a really big way. we're going to see humanitarian efforts in crisis rise. We'll also see community come together to try to challenge that to Ceres to recover the sacred principle. And so individualistically, it's very, very important that you shed the skins of the past each time you are confronted with something that's micro within you in order to help the macro. And each one of us have a special gift. We shouldn't be comparing ourselves to others. There's a girl in my community who she started an outreach program because at one point in time she was homeless herself. And so what she does is she started making sandwiches for the homeless community. And then it turned into crowdsourcing funds to be able to pay for, um, you know, below zero, below zero, sleeping bags. So people that she became friends with whenever she was homeless herself wouldn't freeze to death. This was after a few of her friends did die through the freezing temperatures here in Oklahoma. Um, I've seen people who, from their traumatic experiences, really be able to strip away their conditioning. It's humbling, and they get into their own sacred power of how can I utilize this experience to help serve others. I do it with astrology. It's why I talk about the things that in the past, remember, I have a lot of Capricorn, I would have never talked about because I feel like being vulnerable connects me to you all. That way, maybe I'm an authority in astrology, but I'm a human and it humanizes me. It's because I want all of us to perceive each other as equals. I don't ever want to be put on a pedestal. And so the way that I can counteract people's perceptions is through speaking about my vulnerabilities. That's where I find my power is being in the counterpoint of all my Capricorn is my Cancer stuff is being vulnerable. So that way it humanizes me and I'm not just someone on the screen who is like all knowing because I see that in spiritual communities. It's something that I like it bothers me. And that's because I've dealt with authority figures that have nothing to do with the work that I do that put themselves on a pedestal, that create divisiveness or exclusion. And so it's about finding the Ceres type of seed within you and watering it in order to recover and to nurture where you might have felt like you lost something that you're needing for it to grow and to bloom so that way it can help community. And so that's also why that new moon in Sagittarius was really important for reclaiming one's authenticity and authentic soul nature and stripping oneself bare of the internalized messages and beliefs that one has taken in because we each have a very important and specific function, no matter how seemingly big or small, it's all equal. And Ceres, Venus, and Pluto are here to accelerate this function. The other thing I want to speak about is Ceres and Venus are balsamic to Pluto. Venus is very quickly going to pass over Pluto, you know, um, after the 7th when this triple conjunction is happening. But right now, leading up to it, Ceres and Venus are balsamic. And so this is a time to be wrapping up these instances where we are looking at and observing where we have lost something. And I did a video like 2 weeks ago, I want to say, where I was talking about Cassandra and utilizing your voice and turning a traumatic experience that once felt like poison now into potion to be of service. Cassandra, whenever Pluto, Venus, and Ceres are conjunct in Aquarius at 0 degrees, Cassandra is going to be at 7 degrees Aquarius. And so it's taking this energy to fortify and build community through your own co-creative function, whether it be with source, with friends, with your community, and ultimately with source. And really helping to motivate people just by being your authentic self, that this can be done and you can be a help, and no matter how big or small of a way. I Anytime I'm able, the homeless population here is wild. I try to do things in very small ways outside of um, being an astrologer. Whether that's like there was a homeless man the other day. I went into like Dollar Tree. My son wanted something, and there was this man out there, and his like lips were dry and cracked, and I had a few dollars. I He didn't ask me for anything. He opened a door. He was very kind and lovely, but he was unhoused. And I had seen him around in that strip mall before several times. I knew where his camp was, and I got him some snacks and like some water, because that's what community does. We're not going to pass judgment. That's like another thing. Is I was talking to someone about this, and she talked to me about how she had learned not to give money to unhoused people because they were going to go buy drugs. And the way I see that is okay, well, I'm giving this to them, whether it be money, water, I don't care. They can do whatever they want with it. You know, if I give an unhoused person water, that they can use it to smoke crack or to inject drugs. Like, you don't know, and it's none of my business. But if I see that I could be of help, it's up to that person to do what they want with what I'm giving them for help. And that's none of my business after that. So it's even in these little micro ways that you can do something. Um, I have a friend who, she brings joy to the community by blowing bubbles everywhere she goes. Like, that seems so insignificant, but there are so many stories that she tells me she gets so much joy out of it. And then she gets joy out of it because, one, it makes her happy. She's reconnecting with her inner child, but also people like talk to her about it and how they think it's lovely. And especially in the times that we're living in, like, that is even a way of being, it's a small act of service that you wouldn't even, it's so nuanced, you wouldn't even think of it. So we need to liberate from comparing our gifts or our contributions to what other people can do. And we need to recover Ceres, the dynamics that are divinely inspired within us, even if it's down to just blowing bubbles, because it cultivates joy in your life and other people's lives. It really can be so simple and so small, but it can make a difference. And this conjunction is wanting us to wrap up where we're feeling this insecurity around showing up in our community the way that we need to, or where we're needing to strip ourselves bare of the messages that we've internalized and taken in that's impeding upon us for showing up in this way. Like, if you're comparing yourself to other people, and you're not doing something that you might have an idea about. An idea, by the way, is an Aquarian dynamic, because it's dealing with higher intelligence. If you're getting a tap on your shoulder to do something, you might want to lean into that. So there's this dynamic of sharing. Uranus and Taurus is ruling all of this, and Taurus is about resources. And this can be where we're sharing our resources, no matter how big or small that they are, that can change and create a ripple effect within the community. There's going to be things that come up globally where we're going to be called individually or on a community level to band together and to help serve, to be good stewards, to change, to make a difference. And the ideas that we have about it There can be unity and diversity. We can come together and bounce ideas off of each other and really make something happen. This is the Ceres principle. But as it is balsamic to Pluto, there's this need for us to wrap up anything that's impeding upon us from acting in this way, to strip ourselves bare, to observe, why am I not doing what I'm being called to do right now? Because the world really needs it. And again, I can't implore to you, it doesn't matter how big or how small it is, it needs to be done. And this can actually start to shift the collective conscious in different ways. It's one thing to talk about something, and it's another thing to create and cultivate action around that. And that Mars and Leo is beckoning for us to create action around the ideas and the individual gifts that each one of us have, and then the need to share those resources with others. So as Ceres eventually passes over Pluto, things are going to get a bit interesting as well. We're going to see more dynamics of a loss of community that is going to confront us with how to recover and nurture that sacred principle individually and globally. And so I just wanted to make this video to dive more into this triple conjunction. And I want us to understand that there will be things that come up where we're going to have to be creative and band together in order to recover this sacred principle of community, inner community within ourselves, with source, and with others. Yeah, we're we're in for a time period. The I have a personal opinion about this, and I feel it's a truth. I might not be accurate, but I feel it is. There is such a lack of community, and there's a lot of isolation that goes on. So there's not a sharing of information in a positive way. Community brings positivity whenever it's rooted in giving, sharing, and inclusion. And there are subgroups of people right now that are building community, but they're more rooted in a Leonian grandiosity, exclusionary way. And I feel that there needs to be more of us that come out of hiding to build community that is rooted in these timeless principles of giving, sharing, and inclusion, and in love is really what that amounts to. In order for others, for it to be in a very Aquarius way projected out through the Leonian mirror of what that can look like when you're rooted in love and dignity and inclusivity. Because there's so much divisiveness and lack of leadership that there needs to be natural leaders and natural role models who come up and come out. And I have this feeling that a lot of people are very afraid because of prior trauma from past lifetimes that maybe is still being held subconsciously. And so it's really important for us to start to cultivate communities that are enriching and are rooted in love. And I know I'm going to do my best to do my part. Because the thing at the end of the day is I don't want to walk out of this lifetime and realize that I didn't do what I needed to do to help perpetuate that. So I wanted to speak about this, like I said. I also, if you're really wanting to dive into more of what Ceres is about, I do have my first class over the goddess asteroids that's looking at Ceres and Lilith together. That's happening this Saturday. You can go on my website and reach out to me, purchase that if you want, or be there. I would love to see more people be a part of community and that way. Um, I love doing workshops or class series because people end up being friends. That's how I first started becoming friends with people in astrology. Um, one of my closest friends I met in an astrology group before I became an astrologer. And she's seen my journey with this, and I've been watching her journey as she's been evolving. And there's so much love there for each other and an understanding. Especially that happened in a time in my life whenever I felt really isolated and alone within my community. Through other astrology groups, I was able to meet friends. And a lot of my clients know that I have become friends with a lot of clients over the years. They're some of my dearest people in my life. And so, if you're interested in that, it's a great way to build community. The class is happening on the day that this triple conjunction happens. And um, like I said, I'm doing that class with Lilith in tandem because I feel like those two asteroid goddesses really work together because Lilith is very much the natural principle of our most undistorted, um, unconditioned essence of ourselves on a soul level. And it really speaks to where we champion for that inner principle of recovering that, whereas Ceres speaks to the journey of how we get there. Ceres is where we'll lose things that we're holding on to and that are we're wanting to control or so bad that are actually preventing us from knowing ourselves in the most undistorted way. And then it's talking about how to nurture that sacred principle within us in order to really tap into our own unique gifts that intercede within our soul that helps us to fortify that sacred principle of our inner relationship to self and from source. And so I'm really excited about this first class. I'm excited about all of them, but this is the one I'm focusing on because it's coming up. So I would love to see more of you there if you're able to. If not, there'll be a recording. You can purchase it, or if you can't be for the live class, but you do purchase it, I am going to send you the recording. So I just feel like it's a time to build community for sure. Even if you can't participate, you don't have the funds, like just chatting and talking on my YouTube channel, commenting with other people is a great way to build those relationships with each other. And I think it's really important right now for us to not isolate and to really be apart instead of separate. So, anyway, I hope that this helps you all understand. And um, yeah, I'm looking forward to Ceres transiting through the sign of Aquarius to see how community can be recovered and how our unique individualistic creativity can be merged with others as a way to fortify activism, humanitarian efforts, community, friends, um, all of that. So I hope you all have a good week and I will see you soon.